Hi, I'm Gary and welcome to my shop. In this video I'm going to show you how I make this razor stand. This is a Woodcraft kit, actually 3 components to it, so you can have a selection of which components you want to put together. The mug is not a part of it, it's just the stand itself, the shaving brush, and the razor handle. That comprises a 3-component kit. I will move on here and I'll show you how I do this, and it's a very simple one to put together. It's not as complicated as it looks. It's very simple and easy, so I'll show you how we do it. Okay, this is a package of components I select to make as I like this style the best. Other components are available depending on your preference. This is a Woodcraft set that I'm making in this video. There are other suppliers such as PSI and Rockler, and they have a selection of components too. A lot of the kits look the same, but some do vary. Now, this is a kit I made previously that I personally use, and this is made out of cocobolo wood, and I happened to get some that had some really great wood grain to it. Then as far as the shaving mug goes for your shaving soap, I just picked up a coffee mug that fit, and this one kind of reminds me of those old tin cups you'd use on camping and stuff, so I kind of like that. But these kits comprise of 3 components. They comprise of the razor and shaving brush stand in chrome, and this is Woodcraft item numbers here. Their number is 153292, and it goes for $12.99. I'll put all this information in the description below also, and in a PDF document that I'll put on my website that you can access. The kit for the badger hair shaving brush is item number 151091, and it goes for $10.25. The razor kit handle in chrome is item number 151092, and it goes for $13.50. These prices can change over time. Sometimes they're on sale, and sometimes, parts and components and prices do change. The kit contents, each package, 3 packages, comes with their parts to them. This is the razor stand part. They come in these Ziploc bags, and most of them are wrapped for protection during shipping. This is a base piece, which is the chrome. And it's got this plate that goes on the bottom side of that, and it comes with a tube that is, whatever the length is according to the instructions, a little over 3 inches. That'll go as a part of that. The upper part here that holds the razor and the shaving brush, much like this kit does. It's got 3 little plastic rubber feet you can stick on for protection. Like this has these 3 plastic feet for protection of your surfaces. This screw and a nut which fastens to the bottom part of this tube here, and it'll screw into this here, fasten it to this plate. Then there's a top cap for the top here, and I seem to have 2 of them here. I'm not sure why I've got 2. Maybe they stuck an extra one in this particular package. So those are those components. Okay, for the razor handle itself, such as this, comes with a brass tube, an end that holds the razor blade in place. Doesn't come with the razor blades. Those are something you have to buy separately, and these are, I think, Gillette Mach 3s. They work pretty good for me. Of course, I don't shave my entire face, just the lower part of my beard. So it's got that head, the tube, 2 ends to it. Okay, and then this piece here goes there because this part screws off. So you get the 2 ends, and then this piece that holds the razor blade itself. So those parts. Then the badger hair shaving brush itself comes like this, and what you'll do is to drill a hole, 20mm recess hole that this will glue into, as I did with this one, and it's glued into the handle. And there's a special process we go through for doing that, and I will be showing you how to do that. Now we also get instructions with this. These instructions are quite complete. There's a lot to it. Each one of them for each component has 2 pages of instructions. General instructions and assembly, parts listings, preparing your blanks and mounting it, and the bushings for turning the blanks on your lathe, and then the assembly in the end. And all 3 of these are pretty similar to that. This one for the razor handle, this one for the badger hair brush. It gives you some information there. I've got some, actually some extra notes on this myself, on this badger hair brush, that I'll put on the PDF document, my notes on this, some special steps that I took to make it easier to do this. Okay, tools and accessories that you're going to need for doing this. You're going to need a lathe, of course, 7mm pen mandrel, a mandrel saver, a vertical drilling jig, bushings for the deluxe razor and shaving brush stand kit. Actually, the one I've got is a Rockler one. I think Woodcraft has theirs also, and so does PSI. Yeah, the Rockler item number is 153294, and it goes for $4.99. You're also going to need a 7mm drill bit for wood or acrylic, depending on what kind of body material you're going to use. If you're drilling acrylics, you need a special drill bit for that. Otherwise, you can do a lot of damage to your piece and have to start over again. A 20mm Forstner bit, which is for drilling that hole, a recess that this brush will get glued into. A 5/16 drill bit, which I'll discuss later as I get into this. A 3/8 16 National Course tap that we'll use for tapping something into this handle, into this part, for securing it to the mandrel on the lathe so we can do the turning. The mandrel that I use is a mini bottle stopper mandrel for doing this brush handle. This one is a Rockler item number 53459, goes for $11.99. The Woodcraft probably has a similar one. It has a base diameter on this piece of 3/4 of an inch, or about 18.94 millimeters. Additional tools you may need is for cutting blanks, marking center, and doing the drilling. So the blank stock you're going to need is a blank for the stand kit, at least 3 5/16 inches long and 3/4 inch square. A blank for the razor handle of at least 2 5/8 inches long and 3/4 inch square. And then a blank for the brush handle itself, at least 2 inches long and 1 1/2 inches square. I decided to use a piece of this Goncalves Alves, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It has a nice color and a fairly straight wood grain like zebra wood does, but the Goncalves Alves has a richer color to it. So I cut this one piece. This is like 2 inches square, this block. So I cut one piece to a little over 2 inches here for doing the brush handle. Then this piece is about 3 3/8 inches long, which I'm going to cut down to a 3/4 inch and then cut out 2 pieces out of that for doing the handles and the stand also. Here at the bandsaw, I've set my fence 3/4 of an inch away from the blade so I can run this piece through to trim it down to that thickness, and then I'll flip it around and cut another 3/4 on it also for the pieces for the razor handle and the post on the razor stand. Okay, so I have these 2 pieces here. This is the piece I'm going to cut again at 3/4, and then another time at 3/4. So I've got 2 3/4 square pieces to work with. Okay, so I've got my 2 3/4 square pieces for the razor handle and the stand post. Okay, now I'm going to take these 2 pieces and mark them for the lengths of the brass tubes. Mark that. Then I'll trim these on the bandsaw here for the lengths I need. Okay, I got my 2 pieces, trimmed the lengths for what I need. Next I'll mark my centers on the ends and go to the vertical drill press to drill the holes put through the brass tubes. Okay, for marking center on these pieces, I'm going to use this Squid center finder that I've done a video on before, and I'll put a link so you can see how to do this. Since I'm using wood, I'll use this Squid. It doesn't work so well on acrylics because it can tend to just split your acrylic piece apart on you, especially if you tap it too hard. Just a light tap here to give it a mark. Trying to hold these, fairly, straight. Don't have to be too perfect. Gives you a good mark. So next I'll go to the drill press and drill 7mm holes through these to glue in the brass tubes. Okay, here at the drill press, I've got my Rockler vertical drilling jig, and I did a video on this before too, how to use it, how to set drill bit depths and so forth, and how I mounted on this here to fit on this tracks for my drill press table. Now with this, since this one piece is rather long, I'm going to use this drill bit, which is, it's a 7mm bit, but it's a little bit longer than most normal bits are. It's because of the length of this, and also it needs space to be able to chuck it up. Setting my drill bit depth there so I don't go too far. Just want to go barely through the workpiece and into the backup piece on this jig. Now I'll get this centered on the bit again. I'll tighten down the knobs on my jig, tighten it into the drill press table. Okay. I have to go slow and easy. Can't go too fast. Don't want to overheat the bit or the wood. And stop once in a while, clear out debris, and to let the parts cool. Okay, need to stop for a minute, usually 3 minutes, and the bit will cool down and I can continue on. It's cooled down, I'll continue on. Okay, I'm almost all the way through this now. Yeah, there we got through. This is the long piece, but as you can see, we got all the way through the hole there. That's a good clean cut on both sides. Next step here is to glue the tubes into the blanks that we just drilled. I have my tube insertion tool, and I have a medium CA glue. I've got a paper towel here that's doubled over to help absorb any drips from the glue and protect my surface, and a spare piece of paper towel for wiping things up, as you'll see as I go here. And I will clean up these tubes, a little bit of sandpaper here. This is like a 220 grit sandpaper, and it just kind of removes any corrosion that may have been accumulating on the tubes, so they will glue in better and get a better grip. Don't have to sand them real hard or long, it's just to freshen up the surface a little bit. Then put the tubes on the tube insertion tool, and I'll put on like 2 strips of glue here. And stick it into the blank and give it some twist. Work it in and out a little bit. Don't want to get any of that glue on my fingers though. Then I use this extra piece of paper towel here to make sure I've got this workpiece pushed in all the way, both ends, and wipe off any excess. And same with the other tube. And we're good to go. We'll give that time to dry, about 5 minutes, and then I can go to the drill press again and trim up these ends to be square with the tubes with the barrel trimmer. Have one of my pieces mounted up in my vertical drilling jig here so I can square up the ends with the tube with a barrel trimmer. With this we go slow and easy. This is a carbide cutter, so it cuts very well and very smoothly. But if you go too fast and too hard, you can get some breakout and tear outs and wreck your piece. So you got to go kind of slow and easy, but it gives you an excellent result. And I just keep going down until I get the shiny end of the brass showing up here. Have it with that one. Now I'll do the other end of it. Make sure I line up my bit again here. Okay, have that again, and have got the shiny ends of the brass tubes on both ends, and I will do the same with the other piece. Okay, at the lathe here, have my pen mandrel in place, have my mandrel saver on here, which slides up and down on the mandrel here. I have my 2 bushings I will put on. It's for doing the razor handle and the razor post. Let's see, I've got the razor handle here first, since that's the shortest one. Put on the other bushing, tailstock up, tighten it down to the lathe bed, tighten the quill about a quarter turn, and just snug this by finger tight. Bring up my tool rest. And I try to adjust my height for my tool rest here to be in line as I've got this corner of this piece here perpendicular to my tool rest here, and then for my tool to sit on here, and for my cutting blade to be hitting right about with that. Looks like I've got a pretty good set here, so that'll work pretty good. Now we'll crank this up to around 3,500 to 4,000 RPM and start shaping it. I kind of keep a fairly simple shape to what I do on these. I don't get into a lot of real fancy shapes or anything. Like, I try to keep it simple and elegant. Get my face shield on. So I've got that down to a good round cylindrical shape. Then I'll change my blade over here to a more curved shape so that I can get more control over shaping this further. I work on getting these ends down close to the bushings here, and then I try to make a gentle shape in between them. Okay, I think I've got a pretty good shape there with that. Now I'll just start the sanding. I go from a grit of like 150 down to a 600. Then I use some steel wool after that to get just a little bit finer. Now both this razor handle and the spindle for the stand are going to be the same process here, so I'm just going to go through this once. I like to make sure I'm not getting any lines or marks on there, and to help with the cylindrical lines from the sandpaper, I like to go across this a little bit, back and forth like that between the grits. Okay, down to the final grit here, a 600. That's looking very good. A little bit with the steel wool here now to give it a really fine finish. And get the any dust off with a rag, cotton rag. Next step is I will apply the finish on this. That's very, very smooth. So, okay, I'm ready to finish this now, and what I'm going to use is some wipe-on poly, and I shake this gently. Don't shake it up vigorously. You'll introduce some bubbles into it. Just want to shake it gently like that. Then I will apply some to a rag. Give me a couple of dips here. Get a little bit on there. I turn this on at a low speed. Got mine set to about 1,000. Just rub this on there. Get it on, applied evenly. Nice shiny finish. Now let that dry. This takes about 2.5 to 3 hours to dry between coats. Even though this is a quick dry poly, still takes a few hours to dry. And I'll do 3 coats in total. The brush handle, I have my block here, my workpiece. To center punch it, I use my Squid, although it's not really a good fit because the legs don't really fit over the corners, but they fit right up to the corners. So I kind of carefully, precariously got it on there. Then I gave the top here a whack, and it made a mark for me, so I can do that. Now my next step is going to be where I'm going to take this 20 millimeter Forstner bit and drill this down to the depth required to fit that brush end. I'm going to drill that deep enough to fit this completely seated into the wood. So I'll keep test fitting that to make sure it's down in there deep enough. Then I will take a 5/16 drill bit, because the Forstner bit leaves a little bit of a dimple in there once I'm done. Then I'll use a 5/16 standard drill bit to drill in about another inch, so I can tap that hole with a 3/8 inch coarse thread. And then on that I can put this mini bottle stopper mandrel that will screw into it, and then I'll mount it on the lathe to be able to turn this to shape. Now the reason I use a standard 5/16 drill bit here is because it's got slightly pointed shape there, whereas a brad point bit has got the brad point on it. The cutting edges of the drill bit are flatter, so that tends to wander on you when you're trying to do that center hole there, whereas this will stay on point a lot better. Now on this brush, the thickness that I need, or the depth I need to go to, shows to be about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to set my drill bit stop at 1/4 inch, then I'll start test fitting after that. So I've got my 20mm Forstner bit mounted in here. And what I do is put this down so it's on the surface. Then up here at my drill bit's depth stop, I have this set to a 1/4 inch. I guess apart from the scale, if you can see that on there, another way to check it is maybe to put this on here and see that you've got about a 1/4 inch there. I will start drilling the depth of this. I have this mounted up in my vertical drilling jig as the other things. Okay, that is down to the depth. I will check that. I can go a little bit deeper there. Okay, that's looking pretty good there. Now I have my 5/16 bit in here. I'm going to set this down to here, set my depth stop to 1 inch. Okay, it's drilled down to 1 inch, and the reason I drill it to that depth is to make sure that this mandrel can seat down completely. Okay, my next step here is to tap this hole out to a 3/8 coarse thread to fit onto that mini bottle mandrel. Just go in with that, just like doing bottle stoppers. Back it out now and then to clear out some of the debris until you bottom out on this thing. If you're using softwood, you got to be careful you don't crank down on this too much, because you can wind up stripping out the wood. Okay, I'm at the bottom now. So now this bottle stopper mandrel will screw right into that and fit. And to make for a good fit, as the diameter of this fits right into the wood there, so it gives you a really good guide as to where that edge is. Gets you real close to the diameter of the brush base will be. That way you can shape around that better. Now my next step after doing this is I'm going to go to the bandsaw, and I'm going to trim off these corners here to make it easier for turning on the lathe. When you have a block this big, this square, good to trim these corners off a bit to make it an octagon shape rather than having so much to work with and a chance of breaking pieces off. So the more close to round we can get, the better. Octagon's pretty good. Here at the bandsaw, what I want to do is trim off these corners here. And with my standard fence, if I put that all the way up there, it rocks this over. It won't fit correctly. And if I do this even, it still puts it off kilter a little bit. So I have to rotate this down. And then I adjust it up here. And I rotate this around the 4 times to make sure that I'm not cutting off too much meat off of this on any of the corners. So I want it to all be fairly equal. It's not going to be absolutely perfect, but at least gives me enough meat to work with yet for shaping. I don't want the thickness of this to be any narrower than this narrowest part between this edge and this edge. That should work pretty good. Okay, I can take that piece over to the lathe. Okay, here at the lathe, I have my workpiece mounted into this mini bottle stopper mandrel. It's screwed into there as I tap that hole. Here I will mount it onto drill bit chuck on the head of my lathe. Tighten that down. that good and snug. I'm going to turn it up to a couple thousand RPM, and I'll start shaping this to get it to a good round. Right now it's a little bit lopsided, but we'll get it to a good even round. So my drill shock came loose from my head here a little bit, so I have to stop, tighten that back in again. Take the piece out, give this a tap, try to seat it into that better. Okay. Okay, I've got that down to a pretty good round, and I'll start doing a little bit of shaping. Get the shape down to about a size that feels comfortable to your hand. My hands are a little bit bigger, so this feels pretty good to me. And I'm making this actually for my son, so his hands are about like mine. I'm shaping up the two ends first here, then I'll define the shape of the body here. I have to make a groove in here somewhere around the middle where this will hang on that hanger for the brush on the stand. So I will use this piece that's got to sit on as my gauge for getting this sized. I'll probably get that figured out first, and then do any further shaping on the rest of the handle. There we go, now we can do the rest of the shape. Well, I think that seems like a pretty good shape there. Easy to grab. It'll fit onto this rack. I'll do some sanding, get rid of some of these lines, and then start doing some finishing. Just like the sanding on the other spindle pieces and the razor handle, I'm going to take this from a 150 down to a 600 grit, then a 4-knot steel wool that I'll finish with also. Then I'll use the polyurethane finish as I've been doing with the handles. Okay, I've got this sanded down to the 600 and the 4-knot steel wool. That's looking very good. And so you can see the end. This is what the end looks like. Okay, next step is I will start to finish this up. I'm going to slow this down to my slowest speed. Use some of this wipe-on poly. I will give that a few hours to dry and do 2 more coats. These are my finished pieces that I've coated with that polyurethane. And this is a piece of plywood scraps that I made to stand pieces on while they're finishing or drying. And these are like 1/4-inch dowels, and you sand them down a little bit, and then the 7mm tube will fit onto them. It makes a great drying stand. This is that mini bottle stopper mandrel that I got, and it's just a 3/8 inch shaft on that. That helps for drying it, so now these are dry and we're ready for assembly. I'm going to assemble the stand first, and to illustrate a little bit how this goes together, the base, this piece goes on underneath that. The screw goes in, Then the nut goes on top of that. That will hold that in place with the screw up here. Then what's going to happen next is these two pieces are going to press into this post, and then this bottom one is going to screw on top of that one, and that'll hold the post in place. Then this will be pressed in there. This clip will be like this, and then this screw will hold that in place, as I'll show you as I go along here. Take this post piece and press these two ends in. You may want to look at your wood grain and orient it in a way that's going to look best when it's in a vertical position. Maybe you like those lines like that, or maybe you like them like that. And then put your pieces in there the way you think that's going to look best. I think I'm going to use that style. That's kind of a cathedral pattern that we use on cabinet doors a lot. So my bottom piece is the one with the biggest hollow in it. That's going to go on the bottom. So I'll put this into the press here. Try and get a good alignment. Get that pressed in. Very good. Then the other end for the upper part. Okay, well, my battery kind of died on me prematurely there in that last shot, but I got the other end piece pressed in here, and it'll stand like this vertically. So next is to attach it to this base as I showed you before. The screw goes in, the nut tightens on. That goes on there. Use a small Allen wrench here just to snug that a little bit. Don't have to get it real tight. Then this part with the biggest opening fits onto here. So it's on there securely. You know, hand tight's good enough. Then the rack piece here for holding the brush and handle goes on like that. That screws on, snugs down, and there we've got shaving stand all put together. Also put the feet on the bottom of this base. Put 3 feet on. Try and divide it up in about thirds. This is not an exact science, but close enough. Now for assembly of the razor handle, which is the shorter piece here, I'm going to put this with the head on top, and I'm going to use that same kind of cathedral pattern design, so it'll show up like that as it's hanging on the stand. There'll be the bottom end cap, the body, the upper part where this screws into, and then the razor blade itself will snap onto that, which is a Gillette Mach 3 brand. Next step is I will press these parts into the body, and then all we have to do is screw the head on. Okay, so I've got the cathedral pattern facing up that way. I'm going to put this, press this part in. And the other part on top for the head of the razor. Okay, then the head of the razor that will hold the blade on. And we have the finished handle. So here we got the completed razor stand. The brush hangs on there. Razor handle hangs on there. Nice deal. Well, to wrap this up, thank you for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got the inspiration to make something of your own. Please give me a like and share with your family and friends. And please subscribe to see what I may come up with next. Thank you.